are welcoming Haley Moss via Skype. She's coming to us from Florida. She is the author of Middle School, the stuff that nobody tells you about. But has been involved in, it's like where to begin. This is a woman with so many different talents.
So many talents.
She's currently studying for the bar. Because she's about to be an amazing lawyer, but she's a very accomplished and popular artist and writer and an advocate, in particular for autism, but for special needs as well. So, Haley, welcome. Welcome to Autism Live.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. Tell us about law school. You've already graduated with your Juris Doctor from University of Miami. Tell us about law school and what's next for you.
I graduated a little over a week ago. It was quite honestly one of the best days of my life. And like we were saying, as far as what's next, I'm studying for the Florida bar exam, which I take in July. And even with law school, I think it was an amazing experience. I've learned a lot, and something that was really cool is I was actually my class elected commencement speaker, so I got to give the student address at graduation to everyone in my graduating class, as well as their friends, families, professors, and attorneys in the community. It was truly amazing. So what's next is I get to start practicing, assuming all goes well at the bar exam in September, and hopefully gonna make a difference by being an attorney.
And you want to be an advocate on a smaller level. Eventually, if it originally thought you might want to do something more broad, but tell us about your autism advocacy.
I thought that I was going to go to law school originally when we were talking about law school. I thought that I was going to be doing disability advocacy on a greater scale, like maybe going to DC or working for the Department of Justice, something along those lines. But I realized that most of advocacy work is best on the ground. So more like at home and dealing with the families that we encounter, like my family or your families, or even people on the spectrum or who have disabilities back home. So a lot of policy takes a while to create. There's a lot involved in it, a lot of different moving parts, but I realized that even when you have a family going through a divorce or something just isn't right in our community, there's so much we could do for those people in particular. So even in divorce proceeding, being able to make sure that a child on the spectrum or with a disability is getting services, or it's included in a settlement or a custody arrangement, is something you could do on a small scale that can really make a difference in one person's life and doesn't require the same amount that a policy change that might not happen depending on who's in office or something like that.
I'm curious as to where this desire to be an advocate springs from. How did this happen for you?
I fell into advocacy when I was 13. I was invited by the University of Miami's CARD Center, so the Center for Autism-Related Disabilities. They're actually the ones who diagnosed me when I was 3 years old. And they invited me to go to the Autism Society of America conference. I was 13. It was in Orlando, close to Disney World, so, sounds like a great time at that age. And I went. I was on a panel, and I was the only girl. I was the youngest one, and people were listening to what I had to say. And I also realized that where I'm at would not be possible without a village of people, and that there are so many people that need more from our villages, and there's just so much. And I wanted to be able to give back because I realized I've been very lucky in my life with where I've gotten, what opportunities I've had, and who I've encountered in my life.
And you have encountered some people. We should.
Yeah, we have a picture of you with Bill Clinton.
With some of your artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Is that J-Lo there next to him?
That's J-Lo.
And who's the other gentleman? I don't recognize him.
The other gentleman, I believe, was a teacher from the New York City Public Schools. I'm not 100%
okay.
Sure. It's been a couple of years.
But pretty impressive. You've been moving in some pretty high circles. You are successful in all the different ways that you can be successful. And I'm sure when you just said that you were diagnosed at 3, that there were some people who went, wait, what? Right? But talk to them a little bit about how does autism affect the way you see the world?
So going back to what you were saying about being diagnosed at 3 is I didn't have the best diagnosis you could hope for. I was nonverbal. So a lot of what was expected is an occupational therapist once told my mom that you might get to see her take her driver's test, but you're probably not going to see her go to an elite private high school, because my mom had this high school in mind that she wanted me to go to here in South Florida called Pinecrest. And she's like, you'll see Haley take her driver's test, but you won't see Pinecrest. And I did graduate from Pinecrest 6 years ago now. So that did end up happening. It's really the ability to say, you believe in our kids and you believe in us when the world says no. So I wanted to just throw that one out there real quick.
What type of interventions and treatment and care did you get when you were younger?
I got, I guess what now is known as ABA, but growing up I've always heard it as floor time. So like my mom would play with me and all that stuff, and we did a lot of rewarding with Beanie Babies.
Right.
So I have a very extensive collection of Beanie Babies as a little kid.
Right.
Because my big fan of rewarding proper behavior and things that were expected with toys and stuff. So I always did very well in school, like in the classroom and all that. So it was mainly social stuff as I got older that got harder.
Right. How does autism affect the way you see the world and your work?
I think it just means I have a unique perspective on things. I don't see it as a bad thing. And I know a lot of people don't always see autism as the most positive thing in the world, but I realize that there's no other way that I would know what the world is like. I wouldn't know how to see the world from a neurotypical perspective. To me, the world is beautiful with sometimes it's overly loud sounds or how vivid something looks or just having a wild imagination is. I realize that autism really does change how I see things, and I appreciate that.
And you have a very, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Like some things are hard for me, but they're also the same kinds of things that might come easy to someone else, and things that are easy for me might be hard for someone else. So I just think it's a unique perspective more than anything else.
And you do have a unique perspective because we know that there are so many more boys on the spectrum than girls. And for our viewers that are watching that have girls, what are some issues that you are particularly concerned about relating to women in particular on the autism spectrum? It is the year of the girl and the woman, according to the UN. So what are some things you're concerned about?
With women, I think the most interesting thing is, even though the statistics tend to say that there are more boys than girls, I really think the biggest obstacle that women face is that they're underdiagnosed. So I do think that autism probably does occur equally amongst the sexes. I just don't think that women are diagnosed as often, because oftentimes we pass as something else. If you look at the criteria as a whole for autism, it does seem kind of geared towards the boys. Like, the girls aren't lining up the toy trucks as much, but they might be playing with dolls in a different way, or they might know a really, really vast amount of information about a topic, but it's a more socially acceptable topic, so it doesn't get flagged as quickly. So I realize a lot of girls that I've met on the spectrum as well, we tend to be more socially acceptable in terms of behavior, and we just get written off as quirky, kind of like the movie characters and TV characters that a lot of people find endearing. But the issues I see that face women uniquely are issues revolving around relationships, so like consent and all that kinds of stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about your books, because in particular you like to talk about middle school and college and be helpful and useful. Is there a particular reason why that was such a pressing need for you to talk about those subjects?
Absolutely. So with middle school, I went to 3 different schools in 3 years. So I've seen a lot at that time of my life, and I realized that there was so much that went right and wrong, and there's so much that can be learned from, especially because middle school is collectively everybody's awkward phase in life. So with like puberty and new interests and new people and realizing that you're coming into your own and you want to be a little bit more independent. So I think that it's that phase of life where people are still trying to find themselves and understand how they're not quite little kids anymore. And that's when peers start amping up social pressure. So things like social media and the like. I've actually been talking about updating the book because so much has changed since I was in middle school. I mean, we didn't have Snapchat and Instagram. So things like that. There's so much societal pressure that comes onto young adolescents.
Well, and this is a very interesting book, this middle school, the stuff nobody tells you about, because it's really like an advice book from one girl to another, to say, like an older sister, to say, here's what you need to know on every subject imaginable. A really great thing to give to a family first of all, for mom and dad to read through and understand before somebody starts middle school, but then a great gift to give to a girl who's going off to middle school, really for anybody, girls or boys. But there is a lot of stuff in here that's specific for the girls. That it's amazing how specific you get. Like, you know, I just opened up the book and there's this section on making friends, and it gives some suggestions for conversation starters with friends. Very fascinating information about instant messaging, texting, and cell phones. It's a good book to get for your girls on the spectrum middle school years. But let's talk a little bit about the artwork, and Samantha, show us some pictures.
I just think of things a lot. I'm very active imagination, always was that way. And I also love looking at things like fashion. I love looking at TV. I love just consuming media, if that makes sense. I love getting to just see stuff. So, and then I realized, as far as originality goes, I think that my styles are unique, but I realize that I am just a collection of things that influence me too.
Your drawings are very whimsical and very magical in many ways.
Thank you. But I'll see something and I'll want to incorporate it, and it doesn't mean that it's necessarily my own idea, but it's something that it's like I really want to use that or interpret that. So I was in New York City a couple weeks ago, and I got to see all the modern masters at the MoMA, and so I got to see like Monet's Lilies and Starry Night, things like that in person. And it's like, wow, I want to incorporate some of these elements of how the paint is on these things, certain things like that it's impossible not to be inspired by. So it really is just a collection of everything. And I realize sometimes I've even gotten inspiration from like ads on TV or in magazines or on social media. It's crazy. But I feel like I can get ideas from literally anywhere.
I can't wait to see how you're inspired by Monet. That will be really exciting to see that kind of art with Monet, a nice mix. We're almost out of time, but we're wondering if you have any parting words, any advice for parents or for other people on the spectrum.
I think my biggest advice, if there's like one thing I could tell people, it's trust yourself and listen to yourself. So a lot of people on the spectrum have a lot of gifts and talents. I tell parents, encourage your kids and other people on the spectrum to go for it. And if you are someone on the spectrum, to explore it and to enjoy what gifts you have to bring to the world. We need your perspective. We need your unique talents. We need all of that stuff that makes you who you are.
Amen.
I think that's really important.
Okay.
And another advocacy is to listen to our voices on the spectrum. Is at the end of the day, I am the expert on me. The expert on me is not going to be my parents, although they know a lot about me, but they also can't read my mind. And professionals are not the expert on me either. So I realized at the end of the day, listening to us on the spectrum about our experiences is probably one of the best things that a parent can do, as well as understand, this is how I see the world. This is why that like the fluorescent lights might be too bright, or this is why it might seem super loud to me, or something like that. That makes being on the spectrum a little bit more of a challenge at times. So I think we're the best people to listen to as well.
Absolutely. And I know both of us as parents, one of my favorite things in the world is when there is an individual on the spectrum who is able to convey those inner thoughts, because as a parent, isn't that what you want most, is to know what's going on and why, and to be able to communicate, whether it's verbally or otherwise. We want to know more. We absolutely want to know more. So thank you for that advice. Haley, where can we get the book, and how can we find out more information about you?
You can get the book on Amazon through AAPC, the Autism Asperger Publishing Company. And if you want to follow what I'm up to, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Haley Moss Art, or you can check out my website at haleymossart.com.
Great.
Fabulous.
We wish you the best of luck with your bar that you're going to be taking, and continued success with your writing and your art, Haley. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.